Welcome back to Quest for Truth. Today we will be looking at chapter 10 of Ecclesiastes. In this chapter, Solomon gives many short proverbs on foolishness. In verse 1, Solomon says, "Dead flies make a perfumer's oil stink, so a little foolishness is weightier than wisdom and honor. A small bit of that which is rotten ruins even the best smelling perfume, just like a small amount of foolishness overcomes the wisdom of a man." Jesus uses this idea, if not specifically this passage, to teach his disciples to beware of false teaching. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 5 through 12, Jesus tells them to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is their teaching. Jesus' point is that a small bit of the Pharisees' hypocritical teaching ruins the entirety of their teachings because their understanding of the big picture of Jesus' coming was wrong. Solomon continues in verse 2, "A wise man's heart directs him towards the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him towards the left." To understand this proverb, we must understand the ancient Jewish understanding of right and left. The right was the place of power and strength, and the left was the place of disfavor and incompetence. But notice that it is the heart that directs the man in either direction. The heart that is walking with God will orient itself towards God, and the heart walking in rebellion of God will orient itself away from God. As we draw near to God, our hearts, minds, and wills are transformed closer to the likeness of Christ's heart, mind, and will. As we are transformed, we will seek heavenly things over the things of this world. Verse 3 goes on to say, "Even when the fool walks along the road, his sense is lacking, and he demonstrates to everyone that he is a fool. The fool can't help but show his foolishness to the world." Even a simple task of walking down the road, he parades his lack of sense to the world. His heart is so ingrained with folly that it flows from him at all times. Verse 4 continues, "If the ruler's temper rises against you, do not abandon your position, because composure allays great offenses." One of only two commands in this section relates to the impulsive reaction of those in power. The wise man has patience to endure the anger of the authority. Verses 5 through 7 says, "There is an evil I have seen under the sun, like an error which goes forth from the ruler. Folly is set in many exalted places, while rich men sit in humble places. I have seen slaves riding on horses, and princes walking like slaves on the land. Folly and the slave refer to the foolish man of poor character who is given a place of authority well above his right, and the rich men and the princes are wise and upright men that have been kept from positions of authority in which they would be righteous leaders. We see this in our world today. From bosses to political leaders, many foolish people of low character are put in places of authority, and they use that power for their own gain." In verse 8, Solomon continues, "He who digs a pit will fall into it, and a serpent may bite him who breaks through a wall." Solomon warns that malicious endeavors may blow up in your face. The foolish actions meant to harm others may just harm yourself instead. This is not a prescription of karma, but it warns of the dangers of attacking others. Verse 9 continues this thought, "He who quarries stones may be hurt by them, and he who splits logs may be endangered by them." Solomon warns of the false assumptions of security, even in constructive activities. There is an inherent danger to living life under the sun. As Solomon said before, death may come at any time and in any manner unknown to the man. The point isn't to be extra cautious, but to ensure that you are spiritually safe, so that if an accident happens, you will be with Christ. Solomon continues in verse 10, "If the axe is dull, and he does not sharpen its edge, then he must exert more strength. Wisdom has the advantage of giving success." Wisdom, as the adage goes, says that you should work smarter, not harder. The fool hurries through a task in mindless haste, while wisdom uses the proper tools in the proper manner for the job at hand. It goes deeper than just the physical, too. The fool runs through life trying to do his best to be good enough so that maybe when he dies he can experience a good afterlife. The wise man, on the other hand, seeks Christ as the only answer to his fallen humanity and has eternal security through the blood of Jesus. Even in the Christian life, it is necessary to seek out biblical principles and apply them to our lives according to God's will, rather than run down every road without thought, as the fool does. Verse 11 sets out a limit. If the serpent bites before being charmed, there is no profit for the charmer. The snake charmer knows how to charm the snake, but he did not act in time. The danger here is that we put too much thought into an action and end up acting too late. As Christians, we can even pray, which is a good thing, but it can even go on too long. Solomon says there is a time for thought on a matter and a time for action. Not giving a matter enough thought is as bad as giving too much thought and putting off the action. There must be the proper union between thought and action. Verses 12 through 14 are about the words of the wise and foolish. Words from the mouth of a wise man are gracious, while the lips of a fool consume him. The beginning of his talking is folly, and the end of it is wicked madness. Yet the fool multiplies words. No man knows what will happen, and who can tell him what will come after him. Solomon continues the idea that he introduced in verses 8 and 9 of unseen consequences. The words of the fool may come back to haunt him. His words begin with simple folly and end in evil that can't be questioned. His words begin as innocent lies, but bigger lies must cover those, and even bigger lies to cover those. Out of necessity, the fool's lies consume him, and there is no returning to truth. Quickly the words of the fool come to evil. On the other hand, the words of the wise build each other up in the Lord. Verse 15 says, "The toil of a fool so wearies him that he does not even know how to go to a city. The work of the fool consumes him so much that he cannot see the lasting spiritual things. The fool puts all that he has into the things of the world, so that he has nothing left for God." Do we have time and energy for God? Do we give him his proper due? The wise man ensures that he is not consumed by the world and gives God the time that he deserves. Verses 16 through 17 say, "Woe to you, O land, whose king is a lad, and whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is of nobility, and whose princes eat at the appropriate time, for strength and not for drunkenness." Solomon states that the nation with an inexperienced king and princes that feast in foolishness is doomed to fail, but the nation that has a strong king and wise princes will succeed. In verses 18 and 19 show proof of the failing of the foolish king. Through indolence the rafters sag, and through slackness the house leaks. Men prepare a meal for enjoyment, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything. The reign of the foolish king is demonstrated by sagging rafters and a leaking roof. The house is in shambles, yet the king continues to throw money blindly at the problem. The fool does not seek the proper use of the money. Rather, he foolishly throws more and more money in arrogance. Sound familiar? This is how our government attempts to fix problems. It blindly throws money at them. From domestic issues such as school education, homelessness, and inflation, to global issues such as the situations in Ukraine and Israel. Blindly throwing money never solved the problem. Money may be part of the answer, but it requires wisdom to deal with the money in the proper way. And verse 20 concludes this chapter. "Furthermore, In your bedchamber do not curse the king, and in your sleeping rooms do not curse the rich man, for a bird of the heavens will carry the sound, and the winged creature will make the matter known. Solomon concludes this section with a command to stay calm in the face of a corrupt leader. The same attitude that is had in public should be shared in private. Solomon says that what is said in private may be made known, but even if it's not, we know that God hears even our thoughts. Let us be careful to turn our entire being, our thoughts, words, actions, and desires to God, and live according to His perfect will. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of our series in Ecclesiastes. I hope it's been both useful and encouraging to you on your walk with Christ. And I hope to see you again next week here on Quest for Truth. See you then.